back, my friends, to the Derate the Hate podcast. I am your host, Wilk of WilkWorld.com, and I am so incredibly grateful that you have taken the time to join me for another great episode. Here at the Derate the Hate podcast, we're all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. You know, we did not create the hate, but with your help, we can derate the hate. It starts with each of us as an individual. So what have you done today to make your life a better life? What have you done today to make the world a better place? Making your life a better life starts with individual accountability. How we act, how we react, no matter what happens to us, how we react to it makes the difference. Friends, one of the great things about a bad attitude is we as individuals have the power to change it. One great way to do that, share the Derate the Hate podcast. Share it with your network of friends. Get them to share it. Subscribe. Leave us ratings and feedback. Always greatly appreciated. And with that, let's go. This week's guest on the Derate the Hate podcast is Dan Garscia. Now, this episode came as quite a surprise because this was not supposed to be an interview for the podcast. It was simply an introduction conversation brought about by my friend Rick Hotchner. You guys might remember Rick from episode 48, when Rick and his wife Barbara, who are ambassadors for Braver Angels, were on the podcast talking about bridging the political divide. Well, Rick introduced me to Dan Garscia, who is a part of the executive committee for FAIR Twin Cities. FAIR, the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, has a chapter in the Twin Cities. Dan Garscia is part of that chapter, and we were just having an introductory conversation. The conversation went so well, I thought it provided a lot of great value. Dan and I talked about it and thought it would make a great episode of the podcast. So that's what we're doing today. Now, Dan lives in Maplewood, Minnesota with his wife and two spirited children. Dan has been active in his community for over a decade, starting when he first noticed that the freedoms he values so highly were beginning to erode. Dan joined FAIR because as a partner in an interracial marriage and a father of biracial children, critical race theory threatens the values and principles he and his wife have worked so hard to instill in their children. Dan has witnessed firsthand the damage that CRT can cause in young minds and is willing to do whatever he can to help bring the focus back to the content of character approach that treats all humans with equal dignity. Again, FAIR is an incredible organization. I love those people doing great things for the pro-human movement. And this conversation, again, brings a lot of value. You're not going to want to miss it. Let's go.
Hi, Will.
Hey, good morning, Dan. How are you?
Very good. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well.
Well, yeah, certainly appreciate you setting aside the time here. It's funny, just kind of going over your website and just, I guess, ironically, see a lot of synergy in just kind of my current, I guess, passions. And I think maybe kind of look to align with a lot of what you're trying to do here too. So obviously you had been in contact with Rick and Braver Angels and actually did a debate with them a while back when I first got started up with FAIR here. Are you familiar also with Kendall Qualls and Take Charge and stuff like that?
Yeah, I've had Kendall Qualls actually before he started Take Charge Minnesota, actually before he launched it that Easter.
Yeah.
Was it 2 years ago or 1 year ago? Would have been 1 year ago, I think. Yeah, I had him on the podcast. So
okay. Yeah. So you obviously know who they are, what they're all about. And I got in contact with him as well and ended up doing a video for Take Charge last summer about, and then I also did a debate with Diana from Take Charge on, I guess, the Braver Angels. And it was basically just kind of around this whole conversation. The topic was, should schools be teaching CRT essentially? And me and Diana were against, and then we were going up against obviously the four. And great experience. Love Braver Angels. Certainly want to try and do as much of that as possible, but just time permitting, it's just a little bit tough. I would like to be able to just get some more exposure in that kind of environment, because that was my first time ever doing any kind of like debate or anything like that. But it was a great experience. But kind of my two biggest passions right now, I was fairly active a while ago, but over the last couple of years with things, I took a little bit of a step back, had had kids and they're relatively young and getting busy. So had to just kind of focus in on that. But over the last couple of years, things have just gotten so far out of hand. It was like, okay, I
Right.
can't just sit back anymore. I got to do something. So I am chair of my congressional district for the Libertarian Party, also spokesperson for FAIR here. So I was
Okay.
very active within the Libertarian Party 10 years ago. And just, like I said, had to take a little bit of a step back. And at the time, I was just kind of like, well, maybe I'm just a little paranoid. Maybe things aren't quite that bad, and maybe I just need to kind of focus on my family. And sitting back for 10 years and just watching everything pretty much kind of collapse around me is like, okay, sitting back probably isn't a good idea right now. And I need to
Yeah.
do something. So
Yeah. When I look at things like that, Dan, I think a lot of people, when they look at it, okay, it's just me and my neighbor having a conversation, it doesn't appear to be that bad, which is
right,
good,
right.
But if you watch the news or you listen to the politicians or you do any of
Yep.
that stuff,
Yep.
you're like, oh my God, the world is coming to an end,
Yes.
And that's why it's important for organizations like FAIR and Braver Angels and Take
Yeah,
Charge Minnesota and stuff like that to really get out there at the grassroots level
exactly.
and talk to people and make people understand that a lot of times that stuff we're seeing out there in I think somebody said it real well the other day, the internet ecosystem.
Oh, yep.
I
Yep.
was having a conversation with Christian Watson. He's the
Okay.
spokesperson for Color Us United.
Okay.
And he called it the internet ecosystem. I call social media a dumpster fire, hate, lies,
Yeah.
and misinformation.
Right.
But yeah, I like the word internet ecosystem because if your reality is all based in that internet ecosystem and you're not actually talking to your neighbors and you're not actually getting out there and meeting with people, you're going to just feel like the world's coming to an end all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very important. And, I appreciate what FAIR does a lot. I appreciate what Braver Angels does a lot. I didn't even know those organizations existed until I started doing the Derate the Hate podcast. And I started
Awesome.
finding organizations like them. Those kind of things started finding me.
Right.
And it gives me a lot of hope for what we can do.
Yep. Yep. Nope. Exactly. Just that. And that's kind of when I saw your Derate the Hate and just in the conversations with Rick, and that's kind of been my entire goal is just both within just whether it's more kind of politically with the Libertarian Party, just trying to kind of bring both sides together. Like my past is actually, I've came from the left. Parents were big Democrats. My dad was an iron worker, union guy, essentially graduated college a socialist. And it wasn't until I really got married and had kids, and I'm in an interracial marriage. My kids are African American. And then that's kind of what got me involved with FAIR and stuff like that as well. But just kind of as I just really started to educate myself on what was going on, just seeing kind of just the polarization and just, like you said, the internet ecosystem just driving that wedge and division and hate. And like you said, if you just go out and talk to your neighbors and talk to people, it's really not like that. But it's just like
Right.
we've got the extremes with the microphones on both sides just driving pitchfork nation here. And that's what I'm just trying to bring us all together. Like, we're more alike than we are different. Stop, just turn off the news, turn off the social media and just go talk to people. And
no doubt.
That's kind of what I've been trying to do here. And that's the more I'm able to do that with FAIR or, last year, volunteering at the Libertarian booth at like the state fair, just I had the best conversations on both sides. Like on both sides, most people are just pretty sick and tired of all of this kind of going on. And it was actually just very refreshing and I can get a little pessimistic with everything going on, but it really just kind of like brought me like, well, maybe we're not going to, have a civil war here in a little bit. Maybe people are ready to kind of come together. And the more I am getting out there and talking to people, it has encouraged me a lot from stepping away from, hey, maybe we don't all hate each other. And that's kind of been my passion here over the last couple of years, is just trying to kind of get people to talk and bring people together. And, we're not all full of hate. It's just
No,
talk to people.
no, and that's a lot of what I do. I mean, I think there's obviously a minority out there, and I don't mean minority in that, talking about some race or
Right.
class or whatever. I mean a minority of people that try to keep us apart. I mean they have a vested interest in keeping us apart. Politicians are part of that minority.
Yep.
Not all of them, but I think a good majority of them, and certainly the ones that get the most camera time.
Yeah. Establishment kind
Yep.
of.
They have that. They have that vested interest in keeping us divided because it keeps them in power.
Exactly.
So while, and then the media, you
Right.
can't discount the fact that the media in this country has become more and more vested in keeping people mad at each other
Yes.
than bringing us the information and letting us decide for ourselves what's happening.
Yep.
I don't think there's any greater example than you look at the posts that you post in social media that stations do. I mean, even here in the Twin Cities, I can't stomach most news organizations or whatever, and I really don't watch television. I'm not a pop culture kind of guy. But every morning I watch the news. Right,
Right.
I turn on while I'm getting ready for work. 4:30 in the morning, I turn on Fox 9.
Yep.
And I think for the most part, their physical broadcast on the television is probably the least biased that I can find in the Twin Cities.
Right.
Okay. Now, with that said, you look at their Facebook page, and whoever runs their Facebook organization has got to be one of the most outright biased, let's drive the hate kind of people that's out there.
Yes.
And I can't get my mind around why they would do it. I don't know why they would do it, but I see the stuff that they post and I'm like, why? I mean, why do you use the adjectives and adverbs and things that you do?
Exactly.
Because you have to know, if you're not a complete moron, you have to know that those things will do more to divide people than really bring them together. And it's going to taint the article or taint the pool of people that are going to read the article before it's even read.
Right.
And that kind of thing, Dan, drives me bonkers.
Yes.
And I just want honesty and transparency and reporting. And I want people to realize that those type of people, those types of actions are really, and I'm not going to say I'm perfect in every way, because there's some of the stuff that I posted, especially in my past, but even now today, I try not to use that division. I try to just put it out there and say, hey, what do you think here?
Right.
But they got to know that stuff is not doing anything to bring us together.
I mean, honestly, it's I've gotten to that point where it's so overt, where it's not only do they have to know, it's just very intentional, the gaslighting that they're doing. It's so overt and apparent, like 10 years ago, again, is like, these were kind of things I was kind of like talking about, with like my parents, and they're like, okay, another conspiracy, whatever, and oh, it's all just propaganda, it's all just, coming down by the government. Where now, again, over the last couple of years, now my parents and just everybody are just like, oh my God, you were right. It's just, it's just pure manipulation of just trying to control the narrative. They're so terrified of actually reporting the news and letting people kind of decide for themselves. Like, it's just so controlled now, whether it was George Floyd or COVID or now, Ukraine. It's just so overt now of them just trying to both control the narrative, but just purely gaslight people into just you have to think this way, or you're this, and that, it's just like, that's their reporting. It's like, how is that even journalism? How is that even news? That's just pure propaganda.
And it's not. And the bad thing, Dan, is that people have become so afraid because they see what's happened with the cancel culture kind of thing. So they're afraid to even speak up.
Exactly.
So it's like, so they see this stuff and they probably in the back of their mind think it's wrong. they probably want to say something, but they don't because they're afraid that somehow that machine is going to, is going to decimate them or come in and destroy their life or their job or whatever the case may be. Or they're afraid of what might happen if somebody actually finds out who they are in real life and not online. So, they're like, are the neighbors going to be coming at me with pitchforks and stuff like that? So they keep their mouths shut and rightfully so, because a lot of the stuff that we've seen, it's painful.
That honestly is one of the most terrifying things for me is, again, the more I'm kind of getting out, both, again, whether it's for the Libertarian Party or with FAIR, but on both sides, trying to get people active. That's the number one fear, or the number one issue I hear of people as to why they're not going to get active, is because ultimately getting active means pushing back on the machine. And we've all seen what happens when you do that, as far as, like you said, Pitchfork Nation, then the mob comes after you. You could lose your job, or who knows, God only knows what else, much worse even possibly, where they could show up at your house picketing or whatever. But I mean, that's when that's the state of our affairs, when people are afraid to either run for office and these are good people, good people that just want what's best for all of us, but they're afraid to either just stand up, run for office, or just voice their opinion because they're afraid the mob's going to come after them. And that's our reality. That's the number one issue that I hear from people that are afraid to get active because they don't want the mob to come after them. And that's our reality. Like, how terrifying is that? Where good people won't stand up and do what's needed because they're in fear of the mob. That's where we're at. It's terrifying.
Right. And the thing is it's a terrible cycle, because those people, I say a lot on the podcast, I say those that know the least say the loudest, but also those that are most toxic say it the loudest because they have the biggest microphone, because toxicity sells, unfortunately. And by them constantly perpetuating that narrative that of the cancel culture, this person was this person had this happen because they spoke up, or this person had this point of view, and now look at them. Now look at what's happened. It's painful because it perpetuates that cycle of people, and it just kind of shows them. You use the word mob, and I use it a lot too. Woke mob, cancel culture mob, things like that. But think about mob-like tactics. Think about the different types of extortion, the different types of things that the actual mafioso kind of Cosa Nostra mob would do is, they would, they'd walk into a local shop and say, hey, we're here for the protection money. And the guy's like, well, I don't have the money. Well, you do know what happened to the guy down the street, right? I mean, the guy, windows blown out, building burned down, terrible thing that happened down there. Terrible thing. Hate to see that kind of thing happen to you here. You might want to come up with that protection money, right? So you've got this perpetual cycle now where the media wants to control the narrative, and in doing so, they're constantly making sure they're putting enough stuff out there and saying that cancel culture is not real, but look at what happened over here. See what happened to that guy?
Yes.
So it's nuts, man. It's you can't discount what they're doing, and you can't discount the idea that they know what they're doing as well.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of, again, where I kind of come back to, and it's not just unconscious. It's very purposeful. It's very, there's direct intent behind it. And that's kind of the tough thing about it too, is, I hate to use words like mob and stuff like that, but at the same time, to your point, that's exactly the tactics that they're doing. And unfortunately, that's the most, I think, representative kind of way to kind of frame it up, because that's exactly what they're doing, is mob tactics there. And it obviously seems to kind of lean heavily in one direction, but it comes from both sides to an extent. And like you said, it's just that the small minority has the loudest microphone. So they seem like they're kind of the majority, but I think people are starting to kind of wake up and understand that, they're not. And the silent majority is what's kind of gotten us to this point, and we can't just sit back silent anymore. And that's the big part of like with what we're trying to do at FAIR, and specifically FAIR Twin Cities, is build that community. So people understand that there's strength in numbers, and, give them a little bit of courage to be able to stand up, because they've got an entire community of like-minded people behind them. And it's a lot easier to cancel an individual versus cancel a community. So that's kind of our top priority here, is trying to kind of build that, so people have, when that kind of at least shared sacrifice, like, okay, I've got, maybe I might take a couple of slings and arrows here, but I've got an entire community behind me.
Got an entire community behind you. That's such an important point.
Yeah.
I mean, that is probably the most important thing that organizations like Braver Angels, and Braver Angels isn't out to make a statement one way or another. They're just literally trying to bring people together. But I know FAIR puts out a lot of videos, and they put out some phenomenal stuff. I mean, I think you know that I've had a few people from FAIR on the podcast.
Davis and was it Daniel that spearheads kind of our high school club?
Yep. FAIR at School. Daniel is on there. I had Angel Eduardo on the podcast. I've had Daryl Davis recently on the podcast. So I love the FAIR organization and what they do, and having those organizations putting together, and whether it's like a Kendall Qualls and his Take Charge Minnesota, who, they've got a very defined mission in what he's doing, trying to bring resurrection of the American Black family, and focusing on trying to bring fathers back into the home. They've got a very defined mission. But again, getting involved in organizations like, whether it be Take Charge Minnesota, Braver Angels, FAIR, Color Us United, these programs, I'm always reaching out to organizations like this because, while they may be kind of controversial to some, the reality is they're trying to bring a positive and numbers-based cohesiveness back to the conversation. So you're right. That couldn't be more important, Dan. The idea that you might take a few slings and arrows, as part of the group, but it's a lot better than getting just stomped by as an individual. So I love that a lot. So how many people just in the Twin Cities here, Dan? FAIR Twin Cities, because I hadn't heard of it until Rick Hotchner approached me about it. And unfortunately, I couldn't make it to you guys' get together a couple of weeks ago. I wish I had, but I had a previous engagement that night. But how many people are in the FAIR Twin Cities chat? Would it be considered a chapter or?
Yeah. So FAIR Twin Cities consists of probably, I think, about 5 of us right now that we would say sit on kind of our committee. But as far as just overall members, we've got hundreds of members, and that's kind of what we're trying to do, is reach out to them and just see who's able or looking to kind of get a little more active. But most importantly, just kind of be able to be that kind of liaison to kind of unite all these people. So we're going to be holding much more of those types of trainings and meetings moving forward. So the goal is having one in-person all members meeting a quarter, and then we're going to start holding more kind of virtual monthly meetings. So again, kind of just more of that consistent touch points of being able to get like-minded people together to kind of start build that community in that. So we've got 5 people on our team right now that are really kind of driving these initiatives, but kind of the goal with that too is being able to find parents within districts that are looking to get active, and then create kind of subchapters. So ideally having almost kind of a subchapter in each district, where we're just trying to kind of, again, build a little bit of an infrastructure. So like, okay, we find a couple of parents here in whatever, Roseville, my district, that are looking to kind of, okay, we've got a problem, CRT, and I hate to even use that term because it's just become the all-encompassing boogeyman, but it's just, everybody knows what we're talking about when we say CRT.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So, we got parents that are like, okay, our school's heading down the wrong path. We need to be able to push back, but I'm just a parent. I'm not a trained activist. I got a job. I've got a family. I've got sports. What do I do? And then that's kind of where we come in and, okay, provide them with the infrastructure as far as how to kind of get active, provide them with the resources at FAIR, and just try and kind of give them all the support they need to be able to kind of, whether it's finding candidates willing to kind of run for school boards, how to find them, how to run an effective campaign. One of the people that sit on our committee, she is on the school board at Osseo. So again, she knows how to run and win an effective campaign. But then also too, just so parents able to kind of train them on how to push back at the school board level, but also too how to find candidates willing to run and hopefully be able to win some of these seats that are fair-minded, again, nonpartisan, right or left, but just the fair-minded kind of principles that they've kind of bought into our messaging in that. And then also too, we've had a lot of great meetings with superintendents. So next week, actually, we have a formal pitch at the superintendent in Monticello. And then on Friday, we have a formal pitch to the superintendent in St. Anthony. And we met with the superintendent of Elk River last December. So we've got our national director that goes out there and actually does like a formal presentation, PowerPoint of, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to kind of look at the FAIR story or educational system. Daryl Davis spearheaded a lot of that, but it's a curriculum that we're able to provide to schools that is obviously has nothing to do with being afraid of teaching the ugly history of America, but it does so in a with providing context and perspective so that kids have a healthy outlook of both, our history, but more importantly, our future. So we're able to provide these options to superintendents and school boards as to, hey, you guys don't have to go down this path. There's other options and other alternatives.
Right.
Yep. So that's kind of the main goal is, again, first and foremost, being able to kind of build that community, but it kind of starts around finding these active parents or parents willing to get active. And then bottom line, just giving them whatever support they need, whether, again, it's just, maybe I want to run for a school board, or maybe I want to start a subchapter, or I just need to, I've got a good relationship with the superintendent and, I can get you guys in front of them, do a formal pitch, but any kind of just support that they would need, just making sure that we're able to get them the resources needed to be able to just get our messaging out there. Because that's what we're finding too, is with these meetings with the superintendents that, they're not all bought into this 100%, but like what we're talking about is just they're afraid to speak up because their job could be in jeopardy, and they're not even aware of any other options or alternatives. So when we're able to provide them with this kind of off ramp, it's encouraging as well to see just the eyes and ears kind of perk up like, oh my God, thank you. Like I didn't even know these options were out there. So, this has all kind of come within the last couple of months. Fair Twin Cities, we just got started probably last May, June-ish, so we're not even a year, into existence. But last year was kind of a building year, getting our team together here locally to really kind of make a big push this year. And we're off to a pretty big start as far as just standing up subchapters. We got a specific subchapter in Wayzata. We just stood up our North Metro, which is kind of the Anoka area. Had a great call with some parents out in Forest Lake yesterday. They're interested in both potentially starting a subchapter, but they've got 3 seats open this November. So they want to help us train and get those candidates on our FAIR messaging. Had a similar situation with Minnetonka. They'll probably be starting a subchapter here soon. So we're just trying to kind of find these pockets of parents that are willing to get active. And then again, just get them on board with the messaging, because that's what's key to be able to push back on these school boards essentially, but just it's gotten out into corporate America too. So that's kind of our next big push here, is we're also able to do D&I training, which again is just, it's understanding that racism exists, racism is out there, it's a real thing. But again, too, it's just providing that balanced outlook on this stuff. So again, it's not that divisive, regressive kind of narrative that's just driving people further apart. It's that pro-human, non-tribal, non-partisan messaging that's trying to kind of bring us all together here again.
Yeah. Certainly not making believe that we're as divided by race as we were post, exactly. In the couple of years post Civil War and Reconstruction era times, like some people try to make it out to believe. And I think a lot of times, Dan, at these school, at the school level or whatever, and this is why I love the idea of actually getting in front of these superintendents and stuff like that with a level-headed approach to these things, because I think a lot of times there's just some rogue teachers in there that go unnoticed. I'll give you an example. My cousin got a hold of me a couple weeks ago, and his daughter was 8th grade daughter. This is down in Iowa, and this is something I'm working on with the D-Rate 8 podcast, trying to get a couple people together to talk about this. But his daughter came home with an assignment to review the book Stamped, and Racism, Anti-Racism, and You by Ibram X. Kendi. I mean, just a poisonous, toxic piece of work done by the guy that is just, basically, so anti-white. It's just painful to see things like that. But the teacher has been teaching this in that school for the past couple of years, and the higher ups didn't even know about it. That's what we're hearing. The higher ups didn't even know about it. Whether they chose to ignore it or not, I have no idea. But the idea that something like that would be pressed upon 8th grade minds in our public school system nowadays, for me, it's just two things. Either that stuff goes away, or you take your kids completely out of the public school system. I think there's plenty of reasons to take our kids out of the public school system. That's just one of them. But I love the fact that FAIR is actually going in there and trying to present a reasonable pro-human alternative to that toxic stuff like the book Stamped. It's so important. It's so important. I mean, if there's any chance, obviously the public school system in our country is not going to go away. I would love to see government completely stripped of all responsibility when it comes to our public school system. I don't think you and I are going to see that in our lifetime. I know my daughter will certainly not see the public school system, but that's not going to be an alternative for everybody.
And that's exactly just it. Is, I mean, we've allied with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the foundation called Exodus. Have you heard of them at all?
I have not, but
and I can put you in contact. Coffee, she's part of Take Charge as well. And she's in my district here of Roseville, and she got on my radar. She kind of went viral where she went to one of the school board meetings, and she's African-American woman. Basically just, she's now, I think, she has a law degree and acting lawyer, but just put herself kind of through whatever the educational system and just kind of got herself to this point, and kind of now in this situation like me, where it's just like, I raised, Black kids, but I raised them to be strong, independent leaders, where they've got friends of, white, Black, everything in between. And they're doing excellent, they're excelling in, sports, socially, academically. And now over the last couple of years, they're basically being taught by a public educational system that they're victims and they're oppressed. And it's like, they've never thought or saw themselves in that way, and there's been nothing.
Nor should they.
No, exactly. Yes,
that infuriates me.
Yes, that's what there's nothing more infuriating. That's when I decided I needed to get active. It was when this stuff was brought into my own home, onto my own kids, where they're being stigmatized with these pretty loaded terms of victim, oppressed, when they don't even see. If you have to teach a child that they're a victim because they don't see themselves as a victim, who's that saying more about?
Right?
No, but I mean, that's where Coffee is. And she's, with Black kids too, it's the same thing. Like, I can't think of anything more racist than you wanting to lower the testing standards because you don't think my Black kids can test as well as your white kids, And so she went and she stood up at the school board and went viral, and it was awesome. But she's leading this Exodus movement, is to basically help parents pull kids out of the public educational system, which I'm all for too. I wish we could just, get rid of it tomorrow type deal, but knowing that that's not going to happen, and knowing that that's not an option for everybody, we just want to make sure both angles are covered. Like if you can pull your kids, but we know that not everybody can, so we need an option for them as well, so they at least have a lifeline and some kind of looking out for them as well. So that's kind of where we're working with Exodus. Like, again, I would love to be able to have everybody pull there, and once people do start pulling, I think that's when we're really going to be able to move the needle, because that's ultimately what is going to get these people to kind of listen to us. But again, knowing that not everybody can, that's what fair and what we're trying to do is make sure that, again, we can help them as much as possible as well.
I've talked about it on the podcast. I don't know how many of my episodes you've had an opportunity to listen to, but I did an episode a while back called the reticular activating system and the perpetual victim mentality.
Yes.
I talk a lot about that perpetual victim mentality and just the idea that nobody's life has ever been made better. Nobody's life has ever been made better by convincing them they're a victim. It's just not a reality.
No.
So, and that is almost without exception. So when you see our public school system in many instances now, and I've talked to Dr. Ilana Fishbein from No Left Turn in Education and Tony Kinnett from the Chalkboard Review and stuff. They're organizations that actively fight this stuff every day. So we know that this stuff is being pushed in the public school system all over the country.
Oh, yeah.
But nobody that thinks logically can't understand at this point that teaching somebody that they're a victim, convincing certain people that they're oppressed and other people that they're oppressors, there is nobody that can look at that and say, this is going to make this child's life better.
No.
But it's continuing to happen and it's getting worse.
Yes.
But I think you're right. I think it's very, very important, Dan, that everyone understands it. Like I said, I would love to abolish the public school system now, get government completely out of it, turn it completely into a private sector thing. But we know that that's not a reality. So organizations like FAIR that are going into the schools and presenting an alternative, a pro-human, a make sense, logical alternative to the thing like you talked about. Nobody's denying that there's an ugly part of the American past and whatever, but that needs to be taught in a contextual way that makes sense and then also, again, making sure that people understand that was then and this is now. Nobody's denying that racism still exists, but it's not nearly as prevalent as many would have you believe. So I just, in all these conversations that I have, it always blows my mind that there are people that will not only tolerate that stuff, but promote that stuff. And it just pains me that we live in a time when, I mean, by all rights, there's a lot of people out there that would choose to promote that over logical, common sense alternative.
That's kind of what our training was about, just a couple of weeks ago, was just, again, equipping parents with kind of how to navigate through some of these awkward, uncomfortable conversations around race and gender. But I mean, ultimately, that's kind of what we're all kind of up against, is we've all got friends, we've all got family, we've all got loved ones that we know that are buying into this. And it's like, I can't understand how, and just even within the educational system, it's like, these are well-educated people. And, at the end of the day, I think they're well-intended. I don't think they're intentionally trying to, handicap my children, but how, people we know and love, both, friends and family and educated people, can buy into this stuff. That's just a mindset I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around as to how you can hear these things. And that's kind of where I've kind of come to. And what I've noticed is a lot of it is kind of revolved around this kind of white guilt that, these people that just, they're so wrapped up in it. When they hear these things, they won't even dare to question it with just simple common sense as to, that's kind of the way I look at it, is just, me being a white male, how was I raised? Well, I'm going to raise my kids the same way as to, I'm not going to raise them to be a victim or oppressed. And like, I try and tell my white friends that, like, what, you're not raising your kids that way. Why would you expect or think it would be a good way for me to raise my kids just because of the color of their skin, and it just,
that's the epitome of racism. that's what I don't get is how people don't see that.
Right.
So
and it's just it's this white guilt wrapped up into the media, how they're just making it seem like that just black males are being hunted down in the streets, and it's just it's systemic racism that's holding black people down. And it's like these are issues that we need to talk about because they are real, are out there, but racism is not a hurdle or obstacle holding my family back. I know that first and foremost because I live it and I see it and I see them flourishing,
right.
Just being able to kind of identify what makes America kind of unique and different in the sense. But that's the way I kind of look at it. And that's where I've kind of come full circle a little bit, again, being a fairly progressive lefty socialist to now just honestly, on a personal level, I'm a bit of an anarchist where I'm just against government as a whole. I'm not talking like anarchists, wearing masks and lobbing bricks through.
Not like Antifa anarchists.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm just against authority as a whole because I understand, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So it's let's just dissolve away from the systems of power. And I think we'll all be much better off for it. I certainly understand and appreciate kind of limited government, and I want to certainly get to that point, but that's what's, I think, the individualism. And that's when I ended up leaving the left. It's when I started to really kind of understand the difference between collectivism and individualism, and understanding collectivism is kind of the root of all racism because it just forces you to see people as
putting people in a box. Another thing that I talk about all the time on our podcast.
Yes.
We're politicians are notorious for putting people in a box, putting them on a shelf, and then only pulling them out when they're needed for pandering purposes and to like you talk about gaslighting and stuff like that. It's very convenient. They'll put everybody in a little box, put a label on that box, put it up on the shelf, and then when it comes time,
election time,
look at that. I pull out this box and make sure this works.
Exactly.
I'm not. When it comes to limited government and individualism versus collectivism and stuff like that, Dan, I am very much in the boat. I think I don't know. Again, when we use terms like socialist and conservative and liberal and conservative, or Republican and Democrat and stuff like that, I understand to a certain point we have to put those labels. Even with Braver Angels, they talk about reds and blues a lot, right? There's really a spectrum there. It's not simply two different colors. There's a spectrum, and because I think as soon as you put a label on somebody that says they're a red or somebody that says they're a blue, now all of a sudden they think you're like follow one particular politician, walk in lockstep, and do not have the original thought in their head.
Right.
I am much more in the camp of, I have the mindset that the government has, the primary job of government is to protect the individual from undue force and fraud.
Yep.
Okay. Government has no rights. Government only has responsibilities. And government's first responsibility is to protect the rights of the individual.
Yep.
Plain and simple.
Yep.
If it falls outside of that, I'm going to start questioning it.
Yep.
I don't care if it's somebody that claims to be a conservative or somebody that claims to be a progressive or somebody that claims, I don't care what they claim to be. If what they are trying to do falls outside of that purview of your first responsibility as a member of government is to protect the rights of the individual, protect me from undue force and fraud.
Yep.
Now, government does that because they have a monopoly on force that they are given by the citizens.
Yep.
So when stuff starts to go awry and they start getting involved in stuff that they shouldn't be, like deciding what me and my doctor are going to do in terms of whatever, I start to get frustrated.
Yep.
So there's no question as to how we as a nation have gotten to where we are.
Right. Because
the government has gotten far too large and started meddling in far too many things that they never should have been involved in.
Just about every aspect of our life.
Yeah. So
they're embedded somewhere in just about every aspect of our life. And it was not at all designed to be that way.
Right. In that conversation that I just had a few weeks back with our friend Daryl Davis, he talks a lot about getting to the nucleus, not simply addressing the symptoms of a problem, but focusing on the nucleus and then taking it. We don't see that anymore in government.
Right.
We see the government chasing every shiny object that they can chase and addressing every symptom that they can find based on whoever had the loudest voice or the most money and was able to bring this symptom to their attention. So now they're going to attack this symptom.
Yep.
They're going to attack this symptom and say, now look what we've done.
Exactly.
But they fixed nothing.
Right.
They fixed nothing. All that they've really done is they've attacked and wasted a bunch of time and money on a symptom when they never even addressed the nucleus.
Exactly. Yeah.
And man, that's a pretty good conversation, Dan.
Right. I mean, just throw this up as a podcast right now.
You know what? I think I'm going to. I mean, if you don't mind, I think I'll. I know this was just going to be a conversation on your and I's part, but I think the conversation itself is certainly worthy of being an episode.
I'm not opposed by any means. So
Good.
Yeah, however you want to kind of play with that one. Yeah, I'm certainly on board. So yeah, however you want to kind of move that forward. But yeah, no, like I said, when I was looking over your website, it was just like everything just kind of connecting the dots as far as there's just everything you're kind of standing for and kind of standing against is right in line kind of with the direction I'm kind of looking to go here, both again kind of politically and with fair. But yeah, to your point, I mean that's kind of where I see it too, is just it's like government is, one of the allegories or analogies is just like, they'll come in and break your leg and then give you the crutches and be like, oh, see, without government, you wouldn't be able to walk. But I mean, they're just constantly chasing their tail, as far as trying to provide solutions to the problems they've created. And it's basically just the justify their means of existence. And it's like, well, you guys are the ones creating all the problems here. You're certainly not the solutions. But it's just kind of getting people to understand that that's kind of the difficult part. I'm coming to find here a little bit anyways, but it's interesting, but yet terrifying just as to how far it's really kind of come over the last couple of years. And that's where I couldn't sit silent anymore. It's just like all my biggest fears and all the dystopian movies and books and novels I, watched and grew up reading. It's like, it's all coming to fruition. It's like, it's happening. Right? Like, this is kind of it. I think we need to do whatever we can to just get people to understand that this isn't time to Netflix and chill. This is
right.
As a responsible parent or just citizen, like we need to stand up because it's not looking good.
Right. Yeah. This is definitely not the time to sit on our hands and sit back and wait to see what's going to happen, because that's not going to get the job done. It's not. And I'm involved in another project with a very high profile person, and that's going to be coming to light here pretty soon too. But, they asked me when we first started talking, I said, Wilk, is it too late? I mean, are we too late? Can this thing be fixed? And this was most specifically with the trust factor between the public health system and the individual.
Yep.
That's an all-encompassing statement.
Right.
Is it too late? Have we gone too far that we can't bring it back? I don't think so. I mean, if I thought it was too late, I wouldn't waste my time doing the Derate the Hate podcast.
Yep.
I would spend, all the time that I do this, I would spend with my family, my wife and kids. I wouldn't even do this, because if it's too late, then why bother? Let's just let's let the chips fall where they may.
Yep. And just enjoy the rest of the time we have here. But yeah.
The Derate the Hate podcast, bettering the world one attitude at a time, trying to turn down that hate factor in our nation. Organizations like FAIR and Braver Angels and Take Charge Minnesota and Color Us United and all of these different organizations give me hope. They tell me that there's people out there. There is a community of people out there that want to make things better.
Right.
And if we don't continue to fight if we simply let the folks in media and the folks in politics, if we continue to allow them to have the biggest microphones, the loudest voices, allowing them to be the only people at the podium and not allowing ourselves and not standing up and taking our rightful spot at the podium and saying, hey,
right,
this is not our reality.
right.
This is only the reality that you're trying to portray so that everybody believes it's the reality, but it's not the reality.
Right.
We're going to fight. We're going to stand up. We're going to put ourselves at the podium and tell you how it really is. And you guys can either get on board or be on the wrong side of history.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly kind of where I'm at as well, as far as just, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I wasn't full of hope. But I mean, that's kind of both the good and the bad of the last couple of years is they've gone so far overboard and so far overreached that it is waking people up all over the place on both the left and the right, across the country, across the world. And that's what gives me hope and encouragement, is just that, is people are finally starting to kind of question, people are finally starting to kind of really kind of wake up. And now it's just kind of that right messaging, that right leader, that right person, the right whatever party, just to kind of unite all these people. Because I do think it's the vast majority is just the silent majority that are starting to realize just that, what we've been talking about, that they can't sit silent anymore, because that's exactly what got us here. And now they're starting to stand up, and that's what's terrifying the system. And that's why it's forcing them to try and clamp down even harder, which is just exposing them even more and waking up more people. And that's exactly what gives me hope and why I'm trying to do this. Now that people are finally waking up, now it's like, yes, okay, now here's, what we can do. Here's how we can kind of push back is, thank you for, waking up, and now let's get active. And here's a good way to start. So that's what gives me hope, is they've so far overreached. Now it's, you really just have to be asleep or just have your head buried in the sand not to see what's going on anymore. It's just
That's
so
right. No, that's absolutely right, Dan. Absolutely right, man. I tell you what, this has been an incredible conversation. I'm definitely going to use it for the podcast, because I think we've covered a lot of important ground. We've had a phenomenal conversation. I think a lot of people can get a lot out of it. With that being said, I think there's definitely room for a lot of collaboration between the D-Rate 8 podcast and Fair Twin Cities, means that, I'm outside of the Twin Cities, so I'm not too far away.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll certainly keep you informed as far as just any events and updates that we have going on. But yeah, bottom line, anything I can do or we can do to help, get your messaging and support out there, just let me know. But yeah, definitely love and appreciate everything you're doing. Appreciate you having, Daryl and Daniel and just anybody on to help get people are desperate to hear. And we just need to make sure that when they're waking up, that we're able to provide that for them. So again, I appreciate everything you're doing out there as well.
Very good. Thanks, Dan. You have a great day. All the best to the family, and take care, man. Friends, I think Dan said it very well in this conversation. There's an awful lot of synergy between what I'm doing and organizations like Fair Twin Cities, organizations like Braver Angels, Take Charge Minnesota, Color Us United. There are a lot of excellent organizations out there doing excellent work to bring people together in spite of all those that are trying to keep us apart. And I just want you to remember, there are ways to get involved, and the only way that we win this battle is for each of us to get involved. Each of us to get involved in whatever way that we can to make this world a better place. Now, obviously, Dan Garscia, our guest in this episode, is working with Fair Twin Cities. But Fair, Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, is a nationwide organization doing phenomenal work all over the country. If you need to figure out a way to get involved with them, check out their website, and that website will be in the show notes. Maybe you can get involved in a local chapter in your area. Maybe it's start your own sub-chapter of a local chapter, or maybe it's just reaching out and finding similar organizations in your particular geographical area. But whatever it is, do it. Get involved. Get out of that mentality that is being driven in that internet ecosystem. in that dumpster fire of hate, lies, and misinformation that so many people spend so much of their time in. And just realize, get out there, be part of your community. Get involved in your community, talk to your neighbors, because the hate is not nearly as prevalent as the politicians and those in the media would have you believe. There's so much good work that we can do together, and I just encourage you, again, get involved. Find that organization. Find that group in your community that's out there working to make the world a better place. Friends, I just want to say again how very, very grateful that I am that you took the time to join me for another Derate the Hate podcast episode. Please share us with your friends, share us with your network. If you haven't done so already, subscribe and talk your friends into doing the same. Feedback and ratings, wherever you get your audio, always greatly appreciated. And with that, I will just say, get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything that you've got, and remember, it's up to you to make each and every day the day that you want it to be. Friends, if there was anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, I would love to hear about it. Email me, wilk@wilkesworld.com, or hit me up on most social media platforms. With that, I am going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next week. Take care.